reporter Ryan Riley.
You're neither wanted here or neither here is what the governor said, and the mayor basically done the same thing.
But could he actually stop President Trump from sending the National Guard to Chicago?
It's going to be an uphill legal battle for him to do so, because the president does have some power here, as we saw in California and how that played out in the court.
I want to weigh in on what's going on here with Donald Trump and federalizing the police. The reason why that these mayors and governors, I'm just going to be frank with you of how I feel, is that all along they have never truly been about utopia, peace, and safety. Now they'll put it on the front platter for everybody to look at in making people think that that's why they wanted to take on these positions and govern their city or govern their state. But in reality, if they truly was in power to be in the defense of safety and peace and orderly stuff, I feel like that they would be supporting the president right now, because these people have failed, miserably failed. And if the truth be known, the reason why that they don't want to do it is because they know that it will affect the system. It will affect the attorneys. It will affect the public defenders. It will affect the prosecutors. It will affect the judges. It will affect the sheriff's department. It will affect the probation department. See, all this is about money. It's about money. And let's say that you was to be able to wave a magic wand over America, and all of a sudden everybody started doing and behaving the way that they were supposed to, as far as actually seeing peace in utopia. Do you realize what would happen to all them different positions? They'd have to close agencies down. They'd have to close jailhouses down. The lawyers would have to go home and say, well, we don't have no cases to represent today because didn't nobody break the law. At the expense of their own expense, they're willing to keep things just like it is because it's such of a money game. It's the same type of reflection towards the tobacco industry or any other industry out there that basically the government has had to shun because of various reasons. But whenever it comes to safety, we know as well as we know the nose on our faces, or we're supposed to, that the only reason why the tobacco industry held on as long as what they held on to as far as their product being so dangerous was because of the money. Just like the oil companies, they're not moving in the direction towards alternative energy. Why? Because of the money. It don't have nothing to do with you and me in practicality towards us going up and down the roads. It don't have nothing to do with me and you toward being able to cool our houses or keep them warm in the winter. It's got to do with the profitability of their positions that now they have already established. They have already established these oil tycoons. And if you was to automatically shut down all the oil and go to a alternative energy source, well, them Exxon, Shell, Valve, and all of them would go out of business. It's the same way with trying to maintain order in our cities, in our streets. If they was to actually perform legitimately order to the degree that everybody started doing what they were supposed to be doing, a lot of these agencies would have to shut down. A lot of these attorneys would have to go home. A lot of these judges wouldn't have no positions. You know, right now they claim that New York, I'm just going to use this as an example real quick before I turn it back on here. They claim that New York City, on average, is backed up 10 years pertaining to getting your case tried before a judge, before the courts. Well, you know, if you're waiting around for 10 years, the odds of something happening to somebody towards them croaking or becoming involved in an accident or just up and dying because of old age or whatever is really very, very high whenever you have to wait 10 years just to be able to decide whether or not the party was either guilty or innocent. It's crazy. And these governors and these mayors opposing law and order. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're opposing order because they're afraid if there really was order, then it would affect their positions. Now, my friends, if that's not evil in the first degree, but it's disguised as trying to present itself as being good, but in reality it's bad. If that's not what's happening here, I don't know what is. I really do not know what is, because that's exactly what's happening. They're moving in as a deception. It's the same way as what Satan does whenever he tries to provoke somebody into anger. And then whenever he finally does succeed in provoking them into anger, and that person responds or feels like that they have to respond because of being provoked, then all of a sudden Satan turns it around towards saying, you see what that person done? You see what that person done? Yeah, we do see what that person done. But why did that person have to do what he done? Was it because the judicial system wasn't taking care of that person pertaining to being derelict? Was it because that person was captured in between a hard place and a rock, and now that person felt like that they had no other alternative other than to basically take the law into their own hands? And that's what they was hoping out here. That's exactly what the law enforcement agencies in this particular district up here in Weakley County, Tennessee, they was hoping that if we prog at him, pick at him, gouge him, agitate him, mess with him long enough and strong enough, he'll buckle. He'll buckle, and once he does buckle, then we'll sure enough turn the tables around and say, you see there, we was telling you all along that this man's got a problem. This man's got a problem. Well, there's no doubt I got plenty of problems. Right now, I've got a really bad problem pertaining to having to bury my only child that was involved in a major accident. I don't deny that I've got problems. I've never denied that I wasn't perfect. I've never denied that I make mistakes, and I'll continue to make mistakes. It's these hypocrites that want to present themselves as being perfect, knowing good and well that their motives is set in the wrong positions. Now, until the American people wake up to this, they're just going to be just like a dog chasing after its tail, going around and around in circles. They're going to be moving, but they ain't going to be going nowhere. Well, they didn't intend to go nowhere. And that's what they're skeptical of or afraid of towards Donald Trump actually going into some of these cities and remodifying people's ways of life. Well, my friends, if it's not a time to remodify people's lives, pretending to seeing all the crime and the overdoses and the gun violence and the dispositions of the money exchanges being this imbalanced towards us being trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, if today, right now, if it's not time to reform, I don't know when it is. And it also abbreviates the fact that they never wanted to reform to begin with. In other words, your judicial systems that claim it, that's what they're in the business for, is to reform people. They're not supposed to be in the business for punishing people. They're supposed to be in the business towards correcting, and if it requires punishment, then they implement punishment. But the main concept of judicial system in any country, in anywhere, is for reform. They want to change you from being a scoundrel to being a decent person, where you're not out here thieving and thugging and manipulating and hurting people. Whenever we have a system this broken and people are objecting to someone like Donald Trump, and don't get me wrong, just because Donald Trump is the president does not give him the legal right to get out here and purposely break the law with his position pertaining to federalizing police. Don't get me wrong, that is totally wrong. Then you are scraping up onto the practicality of a communism rule. But I really don't think that's what his motive is. I really think that he's trying to clean the streets up towards draining the swamp. Well, if he can't get the majority of the people to go along with him, you'll never drain the swamp. And that's exactly what the mayors and the governors and all these other people that's in these positions wants to happen. What they don't want to happen and what they want to happen is two different opposites pertaining to what we're actually seeing and hearing out of our own eyes and ears. And Donald Trump knows this, and because of it, he's putting his foot down. And to be quite honest with you, I'm kind of glad he is. I'm kind of glad he is, because this thing has been overdue now towards this correction for quite some time. And hallelujah that we finally got somebody in there that's recognizing this, that's willing to do something about it. So as far as I'm concerned, no, I don't want to see federal troops going up and down my road. No, I don't want to see tanks going up and down my road. No, I don't want to see fighters flying over my house every other day. But you know what? If that's what it takes to put us back into the good graces of God, pertaining to seeing some of the misery that's being lashed out at us, pertaining to us being ravaged again and again and again by Mother Nature, if that's what it takes, then so be it. Because, like I said, God expects order. Whenever a society becomes so out of order that they can no longer function like a civilized society, that's whenever God puts his foot down, and that's whenever he starts punishing everybody. Because whenever it comes to the wrath of God, whenever it comes to the bad side of God, because God's got a good side, God's got a bad side. Whenever it comes to provoking God to the degree that God has to show his bad side, that bad will fall upon to the masses just like the good. Now you may be asking, oh, how do you know that, Juby? How do you know that? Well, the Bible says that whenever it rains, pertaining to the blessings of God, it rains upon the just as the unjust. The just is supposed to represent the godly, the righteous, and the unjust is just the very opposite of godly or righteous. So whenever it rains, pertaining to the blessings of God, it rains on both, correct? Same difference whenever God decides to pull his graceful hand up off of that community or up off of that nation. Whenever the hardship falls upon to the nation, it doesn't just fall upon to the guilty, it also falls upon to the innocent. And until the just or the innocent stand up regarding this and recognizing this, number one, and number two, willing to do something about this, we're going to continue to be, just like I said a while ago, as a dog chasing after its tail, going around and around and around in circles, moving. We're going to be moving, but we're not going to be going nowhere. That's exactly what these mayors, that's exactly what these governors, that's exactly what these town officials desire and want. Now, they'll tell you otherwise. They'll tell you, oh, no. He's wrong. He's wrong about that. We want to see peace. We want to see kindness. We want to see prosperity in our land. We want to see the development of people going to work and getting along and seeing utopia. But in reality, what are you seeing now? Proof is in the pudding. They would not be objectionable to what Donald Trump is doing if they truly wanted to clean up their act. That's my point. Proof is in the pudding. And you can take it for what it's worth. I'm telling you right now, we have a society that's either deranged, deceived, or mixed up, or has been mixed up, and for some reason, we're seeing some of the most craziest stuff happening in the world like I've never seen before.
Sending people to any country where they can bully them to take them, where the person has no connection, they not speak the language, and clearly will be in danger. And I think that's the broader context. Abrego is tip of the iceberg for that.
Could the judge decide which countries Abrego can be sent to? What are her legal boundaries here?
Yeah, that's another good question. I don't know how this judge will handle it. I suspect what this judge will do is decide whether Uganda is safe and then tell the government to go back to the drawing board. Now, remember, Costa Rica said they will take him. That makes sense, as lawyers say. And so hopefully that will be the default. But I suspect the judge won't go through every country and decide on herself. Maybe she says Costa Rica, but maybe she says Uganda doesn't work. Pick another country until they find a country where he will actually be safe.
Is there still a chance he could be freed in the U.S. while he fights his case?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like the administration is intent on keeping him in detention. We'll see how the judge handles it. I think if it's up to the administration, he won't. I mean, you and I have been talking now for months about sort of the policy of just going after immigrants and with no sort of humanizing aspect to it. So I think with him, they've already made clear that they intend to just go after him. It's very dangerous, obviously, when the federal government said, we're going to go after someone no matter what. And that's what's happened. They were embarrassed by the mistake rather than just simply admitting it. They fired the lawyer who did acknowledge the mistake, and now they've been going after him ever since. So I don't think this administration will back down. Whether a federal court ultimately allows him out of detention, we'll have to see.
Legal Alert, thank you so much for providing your expertise and taking the time. Up next here in Ana Cabrera Report.
See, I took notice of the system changing whenever I analyzed the situation pertaining to my great-grandfather that was born basically right around the era of the Civil War era. And then whenever he became a young man, he became a predominant figure in this community towards being a pillar of this area. Well, at that time, that was the going thing. Whenever you empower a judge at that time, he was not only a judge, he was not only a jury, but he was also an executioner. Well, after World War I, somebody got the idea, well, we need to clean up our act a little bit over here because we're still doing things in a heathenistic type way. That's whenever we started changing after World War I. And we decided, well, you know what? Instead of executing these people out in the public towards making a spectacle out of it, because some of those people back then would get on horse and buggy and ride for days just to be able to see somebody get executed. They was turning it into a spectacle, like some sort of a carnival or something. So they decided, well, if we're going to execute anybody, we need to do it in behind the doors. We need to start either putting them in electric chairs or gassing them, or just putting them to the side somewhere and having them put away that way. And I can go along with that, okay? And then they decided, well, instead of a judge having all this power, because there can be biased decisions made, either intentionally or unintentionally, for whatever reasons, let's go with a better standard rule. And instead of having a judge make these decisions, all of them, and plus implementing the punishment if that's what it deserves, let's get a jury to do it. All right, they started tainting or taking away the powers of those men and women going back into the late 1800s, early 1900s. In more ways than one, I agree that would be a more better, productive, fair, truer system. But what has happened with society, it has steadily been depleting the powers of the judges. It has steadily been depleting the powers of this one and that one. And now it's actually depleting the power of Big Brother pertaining to the president being able to step in. Now, I've seen this throughout my lifetime pertaining to these things. And the bottom line is this: whenever you go up the food chain pertaining to the rank and file, once it reaches the point that you no longer have the top tier of your system that's concerned about righteousness and godliness and safety and peace, etc., not a pretending peace, but real peace, that's whenever you have to worry about God the Father coming in in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon them who know not him. And if you think you've seen things change, you ain't seen nothing yet. Whenever it reaches that climax state in the Heavenly Father's eyes, that's whenever basically the world will go into a state of suffering like it has never, ever seen before. And whenever I say that, I know exactly what I'm saying, because I've seen the planet go through many, many eras and many, many sufferings, regardless whether it was some sort of a pandemic like Spanish flu, or major wars, or just minor wars. I've seen suffering happening on this planet, knowing the history of it, like I could never even imagine. But whenever you make a statement that it will be even worser than anything that the planet has ever seen, nor ever shall be again, you just got through talking about the great enchilada. You just got through expressing or explaining about the worst of the very worst that's going to happen to mankind. And I feel like hopefully people like Donald Trump that's in these federal positions can identify that and understand that. Because the more that the wicked are become wicked, the more that the Father will turn towards the blessings. And then we'll all start suffering. Well, I've never seen so much corruption in our media. I've never seen so much corruption in our government. And like I said, you can believe me if you want to, and if you don't want to, that's fine too. But I'm telling you right now, it's a big deception pertaining to our law and order, pertaining to our judicial systems. And if the truth be known, their interior motive is not for safety. It is not for peace. It is not for prosperity and love, but it's for all the opposites. You know, I found out a while ago, talking to my neighbor up here that basically is involved in the trucking industry and knows all about some of the major issues out there on the road, because he was telling me that he had a wrecker service down in Florida, and I think he had a wrecker service up here too as well. But whenever you're involved on the road, getting back to what happened to my son on Highway 40, coming through Oklahoma there around the Shawnee area, towards going over a crest, and all of a sudden backed up traffic right on the edge of the crest, and him hitting his brake, and there was no way possible for him to stop. And he couldn't have been speeding. Speed. Whenever that cop talked about speed was not the issue, because the truck could not go but 65 mile an hour downhill, because them trucks are not designed to go fast. They're not designed really to be out on the road. They're a muscle truck. I mean, taking it from a job site to a job site, yeah, that's fine. But to get out here and actually travel in that automobile, they're not designed for that, especially those Bob trucks like that. So whenever that officer talked about speed, it wasn't the speed. I promise you, it was not the speed. It was the fact that the construction outfit did not back their signs up another half a mile or even a mile, because a lot of times you'll see them put out a state trooper, regardless what state that you may be in, to have the blue lights going. That way it gets the alert of the drivers. That way they will start paying more attention, and that way they will start backing off the fuel a little bit. And you're supposed to go to school to be able to know how to coordinate these things in putting out these signs in these construction zones. That way it will try to eliminate the dangers. I truly believe that my son's death could have been eliminated. And I truly believe, after me hearing what I heard from my investigator, that there was another bad accident in the very same place that killed 3 people over a drunk before that day's end, before 12 o'clock. And there was 3 or 4 other accidents that happened prior to my son's accident, basically in the same spot. I truly believe that if they would have had proper signing, proper advisories, proper warnings, that he could have backed the vehicle off a little bit and been more alert towards the area that he was at. He had just got into the area of going from 70 to 65. They had just started putting out the signs, and they was basically about 2 miles into the actual construction site, because it already backed the traffic up that far. Well, how come those signs couldn't have been another half mile down the road? How come there couldn't have been a state trooper with blue lights going, indicating that there was a problem ahead of him a half a mile as he was going up the crest? That way he would have been looking out for some kind of issue on the road, because they don't care, because they're not following proper protocol whenever it comes to the safety issues out there on the road. Just like my neighbor said, you're supposed to go to school. You're supposed to be certified in knowing how far to put those little red things out, how far the signs are going to be. Like the officer was telling me, usually it goes in 5-mile-an-hour intervals. It'll go from 70 to 65, from 65 to 60, from 60 to 55, from 55 to 50, and then go on down to whatever speed is recommended for that particular area that's in that trouble that they're trying to fix. That's the proper protocol. The proper protocol is whenever the traffic gets backed up too far, they're supposed to also move them signs another half a mile or a mile. That way it gives the drivers enough time to be alert towards what's going on. Now, in certain situations, regardless whether you're drunk or regardless whether you're driving too fast, because the number one element in almost all wrecks is what? Speed. That's usually the case in most cases, is speed. And the next level of guilt in accidents is oversteering. And I guess the next one would be, that would probably be equal to the both, which would be would be proper training, having experience. Because you take, like he was talking about, some illegal immigrant down there in Florida that decided to turn around in the middle of the interstate and caused 3 fatalities because this guy was an illegal immigrant and he'd never driven an automobile before in his life. Some of these people are actually coming out of villages. They're coming out of the Amazons. They're coming out in places like India and China that has never driven before. They don't have no experience whatsoever. Especially whenever you take these illegal immigrants that all of a sudden decides, well, we're just going to turn around right here and start driving in the opposite direction in the middle of the interstate. Experience. That's what I'm trying to make a point at. One of the main reasons why people get involved in accidents is because of lack of experience. Well, whenever you're having people come over here to the United States and all of a sudden you hand them the keys and say, there you go, buddy. I mean, just because you can pass a written exam, and just because you can get through the exam towards getting your driver's license, does not necessarily mean that you're qualified to be out there on the road, pertaining to safety for all of us. And I think that's another area that's been lax in here in America, towards putting our guard down and allowing for all this crap to be happening on the road, which I realize is different than what we're addressing right here pertaining to Donald Trump, but it still meets the same type of criteria as far as safety. That's the only thing that I've been taught all my life, ever since I changed over my occupation from being a commercialized construction worker to basically having to be an auto body technician. The insurance companies, that's all they preached, to making sure that those automobiles was appropriately fixed the way that the manufacturer intended for them to be fixed before they ever get back on the road to be roadworthy, was safety. That's all I heard all my life from every insurance company, all of them. Make sure it's safe. Make sure it's roadworthy. Well, whenever you're talking about the equipment, that's one thing. But now let's look at something else. Let's look at the knowledge. Let's look at the experience of the drivers being out there. Let's look at the construction workers that's supposed to know that if the traffic gets backed up too far, they're supposed to actually move their signs another quarter of a mile or half a mile. That way they can accurately get the driver's attention. That way they'll be looking for a problem. That was not done in my son's case, and it probably wasn't done in either a case or two of the wrecks that happened before. Now, the drunk, occasionally you're going to have somebody out there that's just absolutely breaking the law that shouldn't be out there to begin with. Occasionally, some illegal foreigner is probably going to slip through the cracks and is going to be able to pass the driver's license exam and be out there on the road even though they're not supposed to be out there because of lack of experience. That's going to occur. We do not have a foolproof system, okay, when it comes to the safety issues of the road. But when it comes to the safety issues pertaining to the public, pertaining to the politics of it, if you have people that's bucking the system pertaining to seeing Big Brother come in and basically remodify that area to bring more security and safety into that region, that right there should be an automatic red flag in anybody watching this and observing this over here in America, that these mayors that claim that they become in power for the benefit of the masses are full of crap. These governors that want to buck the system in saying we don't need Donald Trump over here like that governor over there in California was doing are full of crap. Once more, if we have a president that is pursuing illegal activities by giving too much power to these officers, federal officers, or these National Guard units, that's a different story. That's a complete different story. Then you are scheming on the surfaces towards communism rule. But believe it or not, you can actually look at communist-controlled rural countries, regardless whether it's North Korea, China, or even Russia, and by and large, they don't have such idiotic behavior because this is the only country in the whole world, amongst the other 6 continents all over the whole world, that has this type of gun violence and has this type of illegal activity going on. So the proof is in the pudding that it's gotten out of hand. It's been out of hand now for quite some time. Ever since the Virginia deal that happened in the university where the idiot went in there and killed a bunch of people. And what year was that? Like in 2006? 2007? Something like that? Please open your eyes and identify how the devil, Satan, has manipulated people's thinking and manipulated people's morals and motives. And please analyze these situations very carefully, because whenever you get to looking at right versus wrong, wrong versus right, it's either the right thing or the wrong thing. Just like Jesus said, those that was for me cannot be against me. For some unknown reason, here in the Northwest Tennessee area, they never did want to accept that. Because why? Because they'd done already become indoctrinated. They'd already become brainwashed in what people had taught them years beforehand. Well, what people believed years beforehand was during their era or during that season. We're no longer in that same season. Seasons change. And I'm not just talking about literal seasons from winter to spring to summer to fall to winter. I'm talking about political seasons change. And whenever you have a stagnated country that didn't want to change, it didn't want to reform, you got what you got pertaining to a mess of nothing but total chaos, misery, agony, and death. Regardless whether it be regarding the safety issues on the road or the safety issues in our streets, in our cities, pertaining to people not getting along and seeing basically it turn into a Wild Wild West show. Believe it or not, if you really get to looking at the Wild Wild West, though they took it way, way too far in having gun battles right out in the middle of the streets, and the person that was left standing was basically the person that had the fastest or the baddest gun. To some degree, that was way, way off whenever it come to bringing stability to that region as far as it being a civilized society. But if you look at it from another perspective, they probably had less violence, though whenever they did have violence, it was more of a brutal type violence, but they actually had less violence than what we're having right now because it's spread abroad all across the nation on every level, in every aspect that you can think of, regardless whether it be in schools, churches, regardless be on the road, regardless whether it be over here or over there. I mean, just recently we had a killing right up the road here, less than about 30 miles, where an individual killed a whole family and then dropped the infant off, and then he finally got captured, and the TBI has already said, we're after execution. We are going to execute this guy for what he has done. And you know what? That's exactly what they ought to do. Not only should they make an example out of that individual, but a lot of these kids, these juveniles, they know that if they get out here and commit a heinous act, a crime, especially when it comes to killing somebody, odds are they're not going to be tried as an adult. They have an umbrella of safety based around their age, and because of it, they basically gives them, they think, the better edge towards getting out here and conducting a malice act like that, knowing that once they get 18, the judge is going to expunge their record and they're going to be let out and they're going to be able to live their lives as a regular adult. As long as they don't get in trouble again, they'll basically go scot-free. That right there needs to be changed some way or another. I don't know how it needs to be reformed. I don't know in what aspect that it needs to be reformed in, but whenever you basically keep a society under the umbrella of giving them a license to get out here and do whatever they want to do just because they're under 18 is a bunch of crap. Is a bunch of crap. Just like these states that refuse to use death row sentences on capital punishment offenses is a bunch of crap. Once more, what are they doing? They're trying to feed the system. That way, the lawyers will make money, probation officers will make money, the courts will make money. Everybody have a job. Everybody have a job because now these people are going to appeal this, I don't tell you how many times, and before they go through all their appeals, providing that you're in a state that will implement that type of punishment, pertaining to capital punishment, some of them will go for like 20 years. While the taxpayers is paying to keep them fed, bathed, keep them in a bunk. Usually they have TV, hot and cold conditions as far as normalizing their conditions that they live in. Because if we didn't do that, it would be considered unhumane, they say. Well, all right, I go along with the atmosphere part. Okay? But to sit there and say that these people can go through these appeal courts, especially knowing that they are guilty, they should only be able to appeal one time. One appeal to go back and reevaluate to make sure that there wasn't a mistake made, and then after you determine that there was no mistake made, then that should be the end of their appeals. And if they've done something heinous enough to deserve capital punishment, they should go ahead and fulfill their duties and get that person out of society to the degree that they're no longer a threat to us. Once more, we're talking about safety here. But we're also talking about practicality here. And if you don't have practicality that goes along with safety, or if you don't have safety that goes along with practicality, you basically have total chaos. You have basically a bunch of hypocrisy to the degree that now it becomes unproductive. And that's what we've been looking at here in America now for quite some time. Because why? Because these liberal courts, because these liberal judges, because these liberal attorneys wanted to convince us otherwise. Same way with your oil, gasoline tycoons. They had lied to the American people again and again and again. Oh, there's nothing to environmental changes. There's nothing to global warming. And we bought into it. And even today, do you still have deniers saying that there ain't nothing to it? Even though scientists know that it was something to it, that went into the Carter administration right before the Reagan administration and explained to them what was going to happen to us, and they looked at them and said, "Well, get back with us whenever it starts to occur, and then we'll really look serious at these matters." Going back to like the safety issue that I was telling you about, where you have an intersection and you've had 2 or 3 wrecks in that intersection, know it's a very, very dangerous intersection. But yet no, can't nobody get nothing done until usually somebody gets killed and somebody gets sued. Then they'll put in a blinking yellow light, or they'll put in a red light, or they'll make it a 4-way stop, or they'll do other arrangements pretending to make that area more safe. But it usually costs a human life to do that. I'm telling you right now, I personally feel like that the accident that my son was involved in could have been avoided. Could have been avoided. And it should have been avoided. It not only could have been avoided, it should have been avoided if certain people would have done their jobs the way that they're supposed to do their jobs when it comes to the safety issues out there on the road.